This episode of Devsectorseries is brought to you in part by Bee's Place.
Welcome to Bee's Place. This is a 3-bedroom apartment created for the ultimate cozy moment you need. If you wish to get away to somewhere quiet to explore the magic of life and just be happy, then we've got you covered. This unique 3-bedroom apartment is in the heart of Lekki Phase 1, just 3 minutes away from IMAX Film House, 5 minutes to Landmark Beach and so many recreational centers. We guarantee you 24/7 security, power supply, DSTV package, gym, and so much more. Whether you're on a business trip with the family or vacation, Bee's Place is your home away from home. Contact us today for inquiries and reservations.
We were,
and then the environment was cleaned up.
The first time I was hearing about this stuff, it was totally new to me.
Edel with Social Impact Consulting. Hello everyone, my name is Efwa Elens Ede with Social Impact Consulting. I'm a development consultant with 20 years of experience working with NGOs, international NGOs, and bilateral agencies to work in project support, monitoring and evaluation, and civil society strengthening. So now, I saw that local NGOs lack the capacity to manage large-scale projects, which can in turn impact their various communities because they have the connection based on their backgrounds. So this made me create this channel so that I can add value to you for free once you subscribe to this channel and get notified of upcoming videos. I look forward to hearing from you. Hello everyone, quick announcement. The grant writing workshop has been rescheduled to January the 27th and 28th, 2022. So if you're still interested in registering, please click on the link below, register. The early bird still stands, and I will see you in 2022. Hello everyone. Welcome to this very episode of the Development Sector Series, which is Devsectorseries. Now today is going to be quite unique. I'm going to be streaming the interview that I conducted with Dr. Ainehi Edoro-Glines, because the last time that we interviewed her and everything, it was halfway through a pre-recorded conversation with Olufunke Barwa of the Ford Foundation. So this one is going to be starting from the very beginning. We're going to be having a conversation about the role of African literature in social change. Happy viewing. Please like and share. Let it get to as many people as possible. And I'll see you in the comment section. If wherever you're chatting from, please give a shout out, and I will thank you personally live as we watch this video together. See you soon. Take care. Dr. Ainehi Edoro-Glines is a Nigerian academic. She is the Assistant Professor of Global Black Literatures at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, with a joint appointment in the African Cultural Studies Department. She was formerly Assistant Professor of Global Anglophone Literatures at Marquette University. She teaches and does research on African literature and digital culture. She has a BA from Morgan State University, an MA from Kansas University, and a Ph.D. from Duke University. Her research interests include 21st century fiction, literature in digital social media, the global Anglophone novel, African literature, contemporary British fiction, novel theory, political philosophy, and digital humanities. Dr. Ainehi has contributed significantly to the African literary space. She has delivered lectures in conferences, symposiums, and book festivals internationally on the African literature and storytelling scene, utilizing social media platforms to promote African literary arts and various other related topics while encouraging young artists to bloom. She is the founder and editor-in-chief of Brittle Paper, a leading online platform dedicated to African writing and literary culture. She is working on her book titled Forest Imaginaries: How African Novels Think. In 2016, Dr. Ainehi was included in the New African magazine's list of the 100 most influential Africans, with Nigeria's The Guardian reporting her to be among the 5 most influential Nigerian women of 2016. In 2018, she made OK's Africa's Top 100 Women list in honor of her work in media and publishing. Her writing commentaries have been featured on The Guardian, BBC World News, and Africa is a Country. Allow me to introduce to some and present to others Dr. Ainehi Edoro-Glines. Hello, Doc. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Oh, that's such a sweet video. Oh my
goodness. Yeah. You know what? Anytime I do that for my guests are like, "That's me. I did all that."
It's like a mini documentary, you know? It's like, wow, I feel special.
Yeah, I love it. I like to make my guests feel special because a lot of times, folks just kind of just put their head to the ground and just work. So they don't really understand that they've done so much. They're just working. Okay, the next thing.
Yeah.
So sometimes, I just want to be that platform that reminds them that, you've done a lot and kudos and well done.
That's great. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Thank you so much for coming, because I know the time difference is crazy and so many other logistical issues, but thank you so much for taking your time to be with us. So I've been wanting to have this interview with you for a while. We've discussed this for a while now in terms of featuring you here on Devsectorseries, because a lot of writers, African literary giants have been voices for change, for social change, social justice. And and as an expert, I'm like, you would know a whole lot about what's behind the scenes, how they even get to that point where they're Chinua Achebe. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened just now.
But we're talking about Chinua Achebe.
Yes, so he just, he wrote his final book before he passed away. There Was a Country, and it really made a big statement, to the world. So can you just give us a sense, right, of how significant, of the significance of African literature in societal change?
Thank you for that question, and I appreciate your wanting to see the impact of African literature in that way, right? Because many times we don't think of cultural movements as part of the broader movement to create real change in the world, right? That literary people are just trying to, entertain people with books, or musicians are just trying to entertain people with music. But, the kind of connection that you're drawing here, I think, is a very important one, and is one that is relevant to African literature specifically, because at the very inception of modern African literature, right, which many people will place in the 20th century, the late 19th century, African literature actually came into being as part of a larger social change movement. So if you think about the fact that there was colonialism, right? So when people like Thomas Mofolo were writing in South Africa, Achebe started writing in the mid 20th century, right? They were facing a world in which European colonialism still held Africa, right, in thrall. So part of the decolonization movement, part of the attempt to change that, to find for Africans political autonomy, but also cultural freedom, came from the efforts of African writers who were trying to help people imagine a world that was better than what they already had. And that so many of the African writers, Achebe, Wole Soyinka, they were all part of this very, very clear, self-aware projects to change their world. They didn't like it the way it was, politically, culturally, and in all kinds of form. They felt it just wasn't right to be part of a universe where your sovereignty, yourself as a human being was being called into question by exploitative power. And they clearly saw that there was a direct connection between the work that they were doing as storytellers and the possibility of change. And that, so yeah, it's very much in the DNA of African literature to imagine itself like that. And it hasn't changed, right? Because today, as we see new social problems come up, like the discrimination of LGBT communities, we are still seeing African literature at the forefront of trying to kind of, change that.
That's really something, because even our founding fathers, Nnamdi Azikiwe, he was also a writer,
Right.
before he now went into politics. So, and a lot of times even when there are issues that abound in the country, if we don't hear from Wole Soyinka or somebody, we're like, okay, what's happening? We would hear from him. And
Yeah, because you've been thinking, what does Soyinka think? What's he going to say? What's, his input on the situation? And I mean, literature generally itself, it's a powerful cultural tool for social change. And I would say it does this in very real ways. For example, literature helps people to develop empathy for another person's experience, right? So you don't know about someone, their world, their plights, their predicaments, and then you read a story about them, and all of a sudden you are taken into their world. You can vicariously feel their pain, see their worries. That's one powerful way in which literature helps us to actually change our mindset and champion other people's cause. For someone who is very interested in something like this, I would say a novel like Buki Papillon's An Ordinary Wonder is about an intersex Nigerian girl. She was born intersex, but her family just completely made her life miserable by not being open to what it meant to be who she was. After I read that novel, it shook me to the core. For the first time, I could see what it was like to be such a person. And that power of literature to essentially magically transform us into inhabiting somebody else's world is a powerful tool for social change. And literature also serves as a mirror for us and society, so that we can look at literature, at story, poetry, and say, okay, this is why my world is messed up. I don't want to be a part of it. Or this is the kind of world I should aspire to. This is what a better world looks like, right? That's so, I mean, in many ways, the stories, the poetry, the ways that literature forces us to think, ignite conversation, it is a necessary part of social change. And Achebe believes that, literally, that the novels he was writing was shaping minds and changing the world.
Well, it definitely was. And this even transitions us right to our next question about the various literary icons that we have, such as Soyinka, and Chinua Achebe, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who is like a super feminist. I mean, she's like my idol. To take, honestly, I love her books. I'm segueing her book Americana. I just went into a journey of my days in Chicago when she talked about when the character went into a hair shop. I was just like, oh my God.
You're like, that's me. Like that's
So
me.
I was just so I feel like she put so many identities in that book. So she's another one that is awesome. So what kind of path do they take? Did you, like, because you're such an expert and you've studied a lot of these authors, do they take a similar path, or is it different? Is it an inborn gift, or is it something that's developed? Like, what path do they take before they now become that respected voice of social change?
You're very right in your suspicion that everybody's path is different. And I think it's important to realize that, so that we don't reduce everybody's story into some kind of idea of what it should mean to be a writer. Wole Soyinka was a fighter, you know? So this is like 1965. So he's published his first novel in 1966, and he's received training in England in all kinds of theater performances. He's back home now. In 1965, he held a radio station at gunpoint. Okay? Forcing them to broadcast an anti-corruption message.
I see.
Okay? And then this is public information. If you go to pen.org, it's on there. It's kind of part of Soyinka's story as what today we will call a social justice warrior.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very much part of his personality because, you know, if you know Soyinka, you know that his Orisha is Ogun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and sorry, I'm pronouncing it the Edo way because, you know, when I say Ogun, my Yoruba listeners are always like, no, that's not how to pronounce it. But in Edo, we have Ogun too.
Yeah.
That's how we say it. So anyway, that's his Orisha. And Ogun is the god of war. Ogun is a revolutionary figure who doesn't like the status quo. He's this principle in any system that messes up with the system to create the possibility for change. That's how Soyinka sees himself. And all through his life, he's had zero tolerance for any kind of reactionary, repressive system. In 1960, towards the end of the 60s, in the Biafran War, he ended up in jail because, again, he wanted to, you know, intervene in the war. And so his celebrated memoir, The Man Died, is about his experience in jail as a political prisoner. So he is like, calm down, let's fight. That is Soyinka's approach to activism. He's a militant, unapologetically, and he takes on systems of power. He doesn't care how grand or how lethal they are. And many times he's had to pay for it, you know, in very personal ways. In 1994, he had to exile Nigeria because of the then Abacha regime, right? And then he's used his plays a lot to stage protests. That's the kind of activist that he is, the kind of all-out social justice warrior. Achebe is different, right? Achebe, you might not know, he was one of the people who drafted the Ahira Declaration, which is sort of the Bible for Biafra.
I see.
Yeah, so this is a guy who was very passionate about his own idea for political change. And beside that, his novel, Things Fall Apart, is believed to have revolutionized the way Africans imagined colonialism, right? And positioned themselves against it. I'm talking earlier that literature sometimes shapes our minds by showing us what the world should be. For so long, Europeans had told us that our history is crappy, our past is horrible, all Africans did was wake up in the morning and kill themselves, and it was just a completely disorderly society until we came in as the saviors to save
Yeah,
them.
that's the narrative.
That's the narrative. Achebe said that's BS, and writes this beautiful novel in which he represents a complex society. It's not perfect, and Achebe will tell you that. I don't romanticize the past. No society is perfect, but every society is human, and you have to give that to people. So I see him as kind of contributing to social change in the way he gave Africans all over the continent a language to think about their world, to think about their lives in ways that were meaningful. Adichie is of course her path to influencing social change is more familiar to us today, right? We live in the world of social media where if you have any kind of influence, which means having a platform, you are sort of expected to also be actively involved in making social change. This is gone at the days when you can say, I'm an artist, I don't do political stuff. Today, you have to, right? So she sort of came of age in this new reality. And she's used her work, her thinking to essentially revolutionize the way we think about feminism, right? She's made it something that lots of people can relate to, that even men can relate to. And many people don't know this about her, but at the thick of Nigeria's banning of gay marriage and all the stuff happening in Uganda, Adichie was one of the people who voiced openly and powerfully in support of LGBT communities on the continent. So yeah, these are writers who, in their own different ways, they've leveraged either their work, their personal lives, or their writing in support of social change.
And they've really used their art to influence the world, because individually they would just have their individual ideals, but through their art, and they're then able to share it with us, then we're able to even share in their lived experience. And those of us that agree with their ideals, with their ideologies, can now align with them, and then our voices may be amplified.
Right.
It's really something that, they have been able to do this with their gift. So now you talked about some obstacles, especially you spoke about Soyinka, that he was actually imprisoned during the Civil War. I know that I read there was a country, so I have an idea of some of the challenges that Achebe faced during the Biafran War, because he was actually pretty much in the inner caucus in terms of trying to even come up with the government of Biafra.
Right.
So some of those challenges, but do you have anything else to kind of highlight in terms of some of the challenges that they faced and how they were able to overcome them?
Soyinka, I would say, is an example of the personal costs that come from a life of activism, right? In the sense that he was imprisoned, he had to run for his life, he was exiled and stuff like that. But this writer, Ken Saro-Wiwa, who was killed, right, for his advocacy for the Ogoni people against exploitative oil multinationals, right? So like, your life is on the line, and some people get hurt in the process. So to me, that's sort of the big challenge. How can you, as an artist, as a writer, find safety in the midst of advocating for social change, especially when you are in a space that makes you vulnerable. The second thing is something that I think applies to every artist that is in the activist space, and that's something I would say applies also to Adichie's generation, right? Whether whether you are a movie star, a singer, a novelist, you have to use your platform to support something, right? It's expected. If you don't, then you're criticized for it. So today, it feels like it's no longer a matter of choice, right? And you know, I don't know if that's bad or good, right? There's a part of me that wants to respect somebody saying, I don't want to be involved in politics. What I do is art. But then there's also a part of me that says, I mean, darling, you have a platform, you know? There are people suffering. There are people dying. There are people whose freedoms are being taken away. It won't kill you, you know, to use your power, your social influence, which was partly given to you by people themselves, towards that. So I think it's one of those conversations that I think is worth having about what are the limits to a writer's involvement in activism, you know, because you get a situation where it's very possible that your art could then become indistinguishable from your activism, so that people know you less and less as a novelist and more as, you know, that person who champions feminism or who champions X or who champions X, right? And that, so as an artist, how is it possible for you to still in some way maintain something of your art while, you know, actively and publicly being involved in changing things? Or is it possible to find ways that both things are sort of in relation, in conversation, and leverage that, right? But the incontrovertible fact is that today, right, as an artist, you know, one has to think about what it means to work and create within the space of advocating for social change.
That is it. It is a very is an interesting balance. So, are you an artist? Are you an activist? Are you both? How does that? So it's an interesting balance too. So I feel like it's something that has to be up for conversation in terms of how does that work?
How you navigate that that conflict.
Exactly, because I'm sure there are some artists that have this inner conflict, like, I don't want any problem, but you know, there's injustice, but I really don't want it, because there are lots of things to even consider. I think I was talking to I think was it the one of the executives of a newspaper company, and he said, you know, when you are married, things are a bit different, because he was an activist. And then now he's married. So he's like, there are lots of other things I need to consider before as I write, but I still want to be that respected writer. So it's like you said, it's a very interesting balance to look at. So we're going to transition now to the youth. I mean, you know, like I do, that the largest youth population is here in Africa. And so how has the younger generation been embracing African literature?
I mean, very well. You know, in fact, they are African literature at this point. You know,
really,
if you exist within African literary discourse and community long enough, you can sense that something is shifting. You know, and for me, I date it at, I would say, the turn of the 21st century and the advent of digital culture, right? That there's literally a break. You can tell that African literature from before then just feels differently from what it is now. And that's partly because the audiences are different now, you know? Before, we were writing for a global readership who had certain ideas about decolonization, for instance, as being the driving conversation, you know, of African literature. But today, you know, I don't know that millennials, you know, are really centered on colonialism as a way of framing the world. You know, they aren't. I mean, there are other problems. Trust me, the world is
Yeah.
never problem free. There are other
I'm telling
problems.
you.
But I don't think that it's that one specifically, right? And for a long time, African literature was driven, inspired, galvanized by this intention of responding to colonialism as a framework of organizing the world and organizing life, right? But today that has changed. You know, people have different problems, different ideological issues that they want to explore, right? And that so you can feel, you can sense that people, that writers are writing to this new kind of audience. And because they are doing that, yes, our young African readers are very much embracing African literature. And then also, if maybe we go back to Achebe's time, right, we can talk about an African literature that was just defined by what many people would think of as realism, stories that represented life the way they are, that try to be close to representing to representing life as closely as they are to reality, right? So think of a book like Things Fall Apart Again. It's very much easy to read. It's just kind of presenting the world as it is. But then today we're seeing a turn towards speculative fiction.
I see.
African readers of African literature on the continent, outside of it, are very much gravitating towards African science fiction, fantasy, just stories that imagine the future. You sense that is a way that readers and writers are more wrapped up in questions about the future than actually this generation was. They want to say, look, can I imagine what the future could be like? Or can I imagine a future that is centered on Africa? Not every time aliens have to go to Tokyo or go to New York City. They can come to Lagos too. And they can come to Johannesburg too. That's so just these ways that they are reimagining African worlds in relation to questions of the future is a new thing, and is one that many young readers are gravitating towards. And then also, there are just way more young people writing today than ever before. And there are all kinds of social economic reasons to account for this. At Brittle Paper, we receive submissions. Our submissions come from the continent. 99% of submissions we receive are from young writers, 19 years old, 20 years old. And we get like 300 submissions in the list every month.
Wow.
Right? Yes. And that, that's so there's lots, there's a lot of writing happening among young people. And they also, just young people doing big and successful things. I don't know if you know the writer Akwaeke Emezi. Their work has such global resonances, and publishers are willing to pay top dollar, for the works of African writers, many of them very young. So it tells us that the kids are all right. They are taking up the space that was beautifully built up by the previous generation.
That is very good to hear, that they are embracing that we've been able to preserve African literature, no matter how it comes out, because I'm thinking about it as in a full circle theory of change. The former writers are writing the world as it is. This is the way it is. This should be our ideal today. And then the young folks are saying, we're not going to talk about the world as it is, because we are going to talk about the world as it should be, and we're going to even take it beyond our imagination. So that's very encouraging to see. So I'm just gonna go a bit current of what has happened recently. That the Nobel Prize came home, as
Yes.
quoted by Wole Soyinka,
Yes.
that Abdul Razak Gurna, you discussed at BBC. I think I watched your interview. How do we then nurture this young talent
Yeah.
so that they are able to find their voice? You talked about a couple of authors now that are publishers are willing to pay top dollar to publish. How can we continue to get more of that as we're now getting in the entertainment industry? How do we continue to get more of that in terms of the African literary space as we just continue to preserve? Because I feel like Ainehi, our history, for me, a lot of it is being diluted. And I feel like African literature is the frontier that can help us preserve what we have,
Yeah.
based on the former generation and the new generation just saying, okay, this is our future. So how do we nurture that?
There are different ways to do that. I would say the first is systemic, right? Because literature is not existing in a vacuum, right? It feeds off of whatever exists in its cultural space. So the first line of action to me is making sure that African public schools are where they need to be, right? Because on a very basic level, you need to know how to write, right?
True.
You understand? Before you can now begin to nurture the writing within a creative writing context, right? And this is something that we see firsthand in the submissions that we get. We're only able to accept a handful of submissions, right? In part because many of them are not where they need to be. And I think that these harks back to the fact that in many African spaces, I can speak for Nigeria because that's where I'm from, and I went to public school in Nigeria, so I can tell you firsthand. And I know for a fact that it hasn't changed.
Good product.
You're like, you actually undermining your hypothesis.
No, but to be honest, the public schools now, they need a lot of help, and
they need a lot of
probably
help.
going to be in a lot of in a different
They
conversation.
do. Yes.
Oh
yes,
my
they
goodness.
do. They need lots more funding, and they need to be structured in such a way that they nurture children and students from a young age to be curious, to know more, right? Because in a literary industry, it's not just about the writers. You know, when people talk about literature, they think about writers. A literary industry is an ecosystem. You know, we need translators, editors, publicists, publishers, you know, to carry the industry. So, you know, because public school is sort of the first line of education, it's important that people get the help and the training that they need. The next step for me is capacity building, right? You know, we have the African writers globally who are doing things. It's all well and good. We love our Adiches of the world, our Tejukols of the world, you know, our Maza Mengistes of the world. She's an Ethiopian American novelist. We love them, right? They're doing so many big things. But we have to begin to think of how can we create a critical mass of writers, right, who will continue to feed the industry. And that to me involves investing in emergent voices, investing in early career writers. So I'm not talking about people who are established. Writers like the ones that submit to Brittle Paper. These are young people who just have a passion to write. They may not have the skill, but they have the passion, they have the mindset, they have the time. How can we get them at that stage of their career and give them the training that they need in order for them to go to the next level? And creative writing training is super expensive. You can't pay for it. If you're a 17-year-old kid or a 19-year-old young adult in Kigali or Lagos. Like, you can't pay $400 for a creative writing course, right? They're prohibitively expensive. So how can we create infrastructures, pipelines that give these young writers affordable training or free training, and then allows them to have the space to thrive? And so the last thing will be kind of making sure that there are platforms for these people. So continuing to work to build the publishing industry so that our writers can have access to the global literary market. I'm just going to give a quick example. If you haven't read this Son of the House by Cheluchi Onyemelukwe, it's a lovely book about two women who get kidnapped by kidnappers. And then when they found themselves in the place where the kidnappers kept them, they were like, you know what, let's just swap stories, you know? And then they started telling each other about their lives. And, you know, the ending is just, you know, really powerful and affirming. That book was published by a Nigerian publisher originally, but then ended up being picked up by Penguin Random House in the US, in Canada. We want to see more of that type of flow of the literary market, because we are sort of, you know, not tired, but there is a problem with all the cool stuff being published on in the West, and then African publishers buying rights, you know, from publishers in the UK, in the US, for them to publish Nigerian editions of their books, of their of the books of Nigerian.
Really?
Oh, are you kidding me? Absolutely. That's how it works. You know, you know, many African writers are first published in the West, and then maybe a publisher like Narrative Landscape in Lagos will then buy rights and then publish the West African or the Nigerian edition of that book.
Why is it a Nigerian edition? Is it not English?
Why? Because it's the way publishing rights work, right? So you would negotiate for different kinds of rights tied to different regions. For example, a novel will have a UK edition and a US edition, a Canada edition, a China edition, right?
I see.
Right. It's just in terms of how the deals having to do with rights are struck, right? So you have a case where African writers are publishing in the West, and then African publishers have to pay for these rights in order for them to then publish the book at home, you know. But Cheluchi's book is an example in which her publisher is Nigerian. So imagine how that kind of creates an inflow of cash and influence, where now her Nigerian publisher is the one selling rights to all these big publishing houses.
Gotcha.
Do you get my point? So it's a much more viable system for Africa publishing on the continent. You know, so we kind of need, you know, infrastructure that would allow us to do more of those kinds of things, where publishers in Africa have leverage, you know, in ways that allows them to be competitive in the global literary market.
So how can that happen, that they're able to get that leverage? Is it that, because I know some of the authors are maybe Africans in the diaspora, but the ones that are actually in the continent, is it, so what could it be like an inflow of, okay, we have writers that write, and then they get Nigerian or Cameroonian or Beninese publisher, and then they publish, and then they're able to sell the rights to other countries. So is it that we just need a better infrastructure where we have better writers so that can happen? Is that kind of how that should go? I'm very intrigued by this, because this is really interesting.
Yeah, it's I don't know that it's about the talents of the writer. It's about
Okay.
who can
Or
pay
the
$2
infrastructure.
for the talent.
I
Right?
see.
So
I see.
if an American publisher is going to give me more for my book, why am I going to, have my Nigerian publisher, who might not be able to match that kind of offer? Beside that, though, it's also about the way the global publishing industry works. Is that, sadly, it is skewed in favor of Euro-America. So if you're published in America by one of the big threes, Penguin Random House, for instance, if you are published by them, that means you already have access to a kind of platform, visibility for your work, right? It's easier to go global that way than to have your indie press in Lagos or Nairobi, right? Who may not have as much reach, as much money for publicity, as much connections, to place you in necessary prizes and things like that. So it's just, again, a matter of capital and access and influence. Is that, these folks in the West, they are the industry, so like they are commanding the ways in which books are circulating globally. So we need a kind of situation where publishers on the continent can have leverage, and can have access to support and capital that they can use to promote their authors in the right way. And again, remember that I said that the literary scene is an ecosystem. It is also tied to, of course, people like us who provide publicity for writers, in the sense that the more we can get African platforms that have global visibility, the more we can also aid these publishers and help them with their books being visible in a meaningful way. That's it's there are different parts to it, and the key is nurturing every aspect of the industry.
Okay. It's interesting. Thanks for that insight, Ainehi. So now, we just went back and forth about Brittle Paper. I mean, a lot of people who have global reach are very modest, which you have been quite modest about Brittle Paper, but Brittle Paper is a global platform and very well respected globally in terms of African literature. So who are the next authors and poets we need to be looking out for, like within the next? Are you, as you're looking through all these entries, are you seeing the next Chimamanda, the next the next so that when they start to blow, I'll say, hey, you heard it here first.
I mean, I would say, I think there are lots of new voices coming up. I would say one person to look out for is a Nigerian writer called Kasima. That's just her name. So she has what in literature we call a mononym. Her name is just Kasima, and she has this collection of short stories coming out on November 2nd called All Shades of Iberibe. And it's like one of those absurdist stories that blend realism and a bit of fantasy, the supernatural. It is absolutely gorgeous, and she's somebody that many people don't know about, but that they are absolutely going to be blown away by. I would say, in terms of people who I'm looking, and I think that they should be watched closely, I would say Cheluchi Onyemelukwe, so the woman who wrote what's it called? Son of the House. I think she's one of my she's somebody that's just kind of burst into the literary scene, and it's clear that her writing is one that is is going to be around for a long time. In terms of diaspora people, I would say writers like Namina Forna. She's Sierra Leonean American, I think, and her fantasy novel, The Gilded Ones, is pretty amazing. And then Jordan Ifweko is also another diaspora fantasy writer who is doing big things. In Nigeria too, we have TJ Benson. In fact, let me just use this as a shout out to Masobe Books. It's an indie publisher based in Abuja. And I mean, what those guys are doing is amazing. Talk about someone who is figuring out the business of publishing, and also the publicity of publishing, and leveraging social media, to create visibility for their authors and their book. Masobe Books is amazing, and I love what those guys are doing. And I feel like to think about, oh yeah, okay, to think about the industry more broadly, right? Is that again, they are writers that we should be looking, out for, as in for what they're going to do in the future. But there are also publishers who are doing so much, and I'm like, watch out for those guys. They are really going to change the way we produce and consume African literature.
Awesome. So that's a comprehensive list of authors that we will be looking out for in the next coming months, the next coming years. So that's exciting. So like we were saying earlier in the conversation, there are many young people who are passionate about writing. So where do they start, and how do they start to amplify their voices as authors? Now, guys in the audience, if you have any questions for Ainehi, please put it in the comment section so that we'll be able to kind of have a live conversation. Thank you, guys. All right.
I mean, I would say keep writing, right? You have to be right to be a writer. And sometimes I think people don't always connect the two. You'd be surprised. To be a writer, you have to write. Just keep writing, and writing is one of those kinds of skill that you essentially build on over time. You know it by doing it. So I would say develop a habit of writing. And secondly, begin to build an audience now. You are never too young, and you're never too obscure to build an audience. And this is where social media and digital culture in general comes in. Whether you only have 20 followers on Instagram, that is an audience. And that is special, and you are privileged, because 30 years ago, 40 years ago, people didn't have that. Whether you have 20 followers on Instagram, it means that there are 20 people that are waiting to hear what you have to say, and that can respond to you and give you feedback and engage with you. Like, use that, to begin to build a voice and find a voice and create a community around your work. And I've seen this happen with artists, with writers. You start small, and then before you know what, you have this army of people who hang on every word you say and who value your art and your work. But I think is, instead of kind of, focused on wanting to go viral, just start building little by little, whatever small audience you have, and create for them. They will be generous, they will be kind to you, and more so, they will give you a space to fail, to experiment, to figure things out as a writer. That's what Brittle Paper was for me. So I'm saying this from experience, and before you know what, you will build an audience. And then secondly, begin to send your writing out. Don't be scared of rejection. Rejection doesn't mean anything. It just means that somebody somewhere did not like what you wrote. Okay, that's not the end of the world. Send it to another person. Yeah. Get feedback from people. Look for mentors, and just keep writing and submitting. There are platforms like Brittle Paper. There are many of them that are focused on emergent writers. At Brittle Paper, we are not trying to publish anybody fancy. We are not trying to become the New York Times of the New Yorker of Africa. We are not gatekeepers. We're essentially focused on these first-time writers. If you know how many people have said, I was first published on Brittle Paper, and they've gone on to become like script writers in Nollywood, they've become novelists, but they will say that Brittle Paper was the first place they got published. That's the story I want. So branding wise, we focus on those writers that are just coming up and that need a space, and they need real audiences to engage with their writing. That's what we provide. So send submissions to us, okay? And places like us as well, and begin to try your hands at what it means to write and seek out publication in places. And try as much as you can to read. Writing is about reading, okay?
It is.
It's fundamentally about reading. If you're not a reader, it's like,
I know,
you understand. So
it's like putting, like, for me, I think reading is like depositing in the bank, and then writing is withdrawing. So if you don't have any deposit, you can't withdraw.
You can't withdraw. It's like a chef telling you that they don't eat, they starve themselves. And you're just like, no, that doesn't work. So yes, read voraciously, and find community, and network. There are many people that we offer some kind of informal mentorship relationship with. So seek people who can give you that extra support to open doors for you in your work. And just be true to yourself. African worlds have so many stories. Tell stories that you believe is true to your world and to your imagination, as opposed to trying to, kind of rehash or reproduce in a kind of unreflective way what somebody else is doing.
Exactly. Thank you so much. That was quite comprehensive. As you gave like really a step-by-step way for a young artist to just come in and just start writing, reading, and making moves. So let me not take up too much of your time. Let's just get your final thoughts.
I would say thank you for inviting me to share this space with you, which I think is really beautiful. And I mean, it speaks to your brilliance to kind of bring in cultural curators into the very important conversation you're having here about how to systematically create change in the world. Because not everybody would make this connection. Look, that writers, literary people, books, narratives is part of the broader attempt to change the world, but
Yes,
you are. And I think that is super meaningful. And yeah, I'm really delighted that I'm here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Ainehi, and thank you for the great work you've been doing. You've really, like they say, a lot of us go into the diaspora and we get all the knowledge and we're like, okay, it's just me and mine. I feel like you're sharing your gift with all of us, and you're using your gift to really change the world. Just really the innovation you used with literature, because there are many others before you, but the difference is the innovation you decided to use to really contribute to changing this, having this paradigm shift in African literature. So and the world notices what you're doing, and you really inspire me. Anytime I'm trying to come up with one innovation or the other, I'm calling you like, girl, what do you think? Because you really led the way for us to in terms of innovation and trying to do our own work on our own way to change in the world. So thanks so much, Ainehi.
Thanks
And
to you.
Yeah, this is not going to be our last conversation. I'm going to be having conversations. It's going to be like a civic space discussion series, talking about the shrinking spaces in Nigeria, and we're going to be having panelists having conversations about the shrinking civic space. So I will probably in 2022, but and we will be having those kinds of conversations. So thank you so much, lady.
Yeah,
of course, we'll keep you posted.
It's literature can be a powerful tool to expand civic spaces in places where it's been shrunken. Because give people a book to read and it takes them places. So yeah, that's an amazing conversation. Let me know. I'd like to be part of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, take care.
Thank you for
and
having
have a
me.
lovely day. At least your day is just starting, so have a good one. Take care.
Sorry for the time mix up and the whole issue. Really.
Thank you everyone so much for watching this very episode of the Development Sector Series, which is Devsectorseries, partly sponsored by Bee's Place. So what we pretty much discussed was about the role of African literature in social change. So guess what? Next week, we're going to be having a very special guest. Our special guest is going to be Osai Ojigo, from who is the country director of Amnesty International here in Nigeria. So we're going to be having a very interesting conversation just about the civic space, just about human rights, human liberties. And we're going to be having an interesting conversation about Lagos State Judicial Panel of Inquiry on the publication of the NSAS report, what her thoughts are, and then just her thoughts on the remarks from the federal government to the actual report. So I'm extremely excited about us having that conversation. Again, guys, I wanted to announce again, the grant writing workshop has been rescheduled to January 2022 on the 27th and the 28th of January. So if you're interested, please let me know. Let me put that banner down. Let me know. My phone number is on there. Again, I have the online course, NGO Fundraising for Social Impact. Visit www.socialimpact.ng/courses to place your order and get started on the course. So I'm very, very excited about our conversation on Devsectorseries and on future conversations. Again, if you have speakers that you suggest that I have conversations with, send me a message. LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. I'm always very available. My WhatsApp number is right down here on the screen, going down 234-703-539-8086. Thank you so much, everyone, and let us change the world together. Take care. Of Devsectorseries is brought to you in part by Bee's Place.
Welcome to Bee's Place. This is a 3-bedroom apartment created for the ultimate cozy moment you need. If you wish to get away to somewhere quiet to explore the magic of life and just be happy, then we've got you covered. This unique 3-bedroom apartment is in the heart of Lekki Phase 1, just 3 minutes away from IMAX Film House, 5 minutes to Landmark Beach and so many recreational centers. We guarantee you 24/7 security, power supply, DSTV package, gym, and so much more. Whether you're on a business trip with the family or vacation, Bee's Place is your home away from home. Contact us today for inquiries and reservations.
We were
then environment was cleaned up.
The first time I was hearing about this stuff, it was totally new to me.
With social impact consulting.